Here's a simplified version of blog layouts that we usually see in real life. You see a navigation bar on top, some blog posts in a grid on the left, and a column of featured posts on the right. This is what it looks like on large desktops. On a mobile device, however, the posts appear in a single column and you don't see any featured posts. On slightly larger screens, maybe a tablet or a phone in a landscape orientation, you see the posts in 2 columns. On even bigger screens, a tablet in a landscape orientation or a laptop with a small resolution, you see 2 columns and the featured post section. And on large desktops, like we saw, there are 3 columns. Let's build this responsive layout entirely using Tailwind CSS. To save time, I have already added the markup and also added some required styles for a mobile layout since we need to develop mobile first. And that's what you see right here. So this much is already done. But if you increase the browser width, you see that there is just a single column yet and no featured posts. Alright, let's start here. You will find this markup in the file name bloglayout.html within 03 folder once you have switched to the 0303b branch. Let's get started. We'll start with the navigation bar first. If you look at the final result, somewhere around this width, notice the links there. The gap between the links becomes a little bigger. So this must be the LG breakpoint. Let's go to the code. In header, let's go to nav, and currently we have gap 6. So at LG breakpoint, let's increase this to maybe gap 12. Alright, and now let's check our result. I must have to refresh. Yeah, so somewhere around this, we do see the gap increase. So if you notice there's one more change around the LG breakpoint, the overall padding also increases. So the padding on the header and the padding on the main section seems to increase a little. So let's change that next. So coming back here, the header has px8. So at the LG breakpoint, let's change it. Also, as a best practice, it's good to put all the responsive styles at the end of all the other class names. So first you will have all the styles for a mobile layout, followed by SM breakpoint styles, then MD, then LG, and so on. Which is why we'll follow the same thing. Let me increase the padding at LG breakpoint. I will increase it to px12 as well. And then coming to the main, LG px12. Let's refresh. Not this one. Let me refresh this. And yes, the padding has increased. Alright. So the next thing is we make this heading responsive. There's only one change in the heading as well. Once again, at LG breakpoint, it increases the size. So let's close this header. Let's collapse it. Let's open H1 and currently it's text 3XL. At LG, we make it text 5XL. That should work. Yes, that looks perfect. Now we come to the grid layout. So for mobile, we have 1 column and then somewhere around the SM breakpoint, yes, it's the SM breakpoint, it changes to 2 columns. So we come to the grid layout. It's grid calls 1 for now. SM grid calls 2 is what we need. Once again, if we refresh, we have 2 columns as expected. And then at the MD breakpoint, there is no change in the grid or anything. At LG, we start seeing this featured posts. So here, if you look at the markup, the featured posts exist, but it's hidden. So at LG, let's first change it to block and see what happens. So this is LG breakpoint. The featured post has come here at the bottom. Now we want it to the right, so we will have to put this grid layout next to the featured posts by making its parent a flex container, and that parent is nothing but this particular section. So let's add flex and maybe a gap of 12, but we want this to be flex only after LG breakpoint, otherwise it might create some issues even though the featured post is hidden. Maybe we'll see a gap or something. So it's good to add flex at LG breakpoint only, the gap as well at LG. Let's look what happens now. Great, the section does appear in the right place. Now we need to size it correctly. So if you look at the final result, this has a fixed size. The featured post has a fixed size even though this layout is changing. So we can set a particular width and add the class flex none. If you remember in the previous chapter, flex none makes the element inflexible. So let's come to the featured post, and at LG breakpoint, we add a width of, let's say, 60 or something, and then add again at the LG breakpoint, we add the class flex none. Let's refresh. Alright, now it looks like yes, it is fixed, but I think it has to be a little bigger than 60. Let's try W75. Yeah, that looks perfect. Let me see. Yes. Alright, a couple of minor tweaks are pending in this layout. If you notice, there is more gap in the grid layout, and also the margin here between the heading and the blog post is a little higher. It again changes only at the LG breakpoint. So let's change that to LG gap. Again, this looks like gap 8. And then we also have to increase this margin top. So LG MG 12. This should do. Let's check. Refresh. And yeah. Now the margin and the gap look exactly like we need. The only thing pending right now is at the next breakpoint, which is the XL, we change the grid columns to 3 instead of 2. So back to the grid calls, LG gap 8 is done, and now we say XL grid calls 3. Okay. Now let's increase the browser width, and yes, perfect, this is it. These are some of the most common things that need to be taken care of in responsive layouts. As you go higher in screen width, you need to handle increase in font size, padding, margins, and gaps. And when it comes to flex and grid layouts, usually flex direction changes from column to row, some elements go from hidden to block, and in grid layout, the number of columns go from 1 to 2, 3, or 4. With this understanding of creating responsive layouts in Tailwind, it's time for a quick challenge.